Konbanwa. Irashaimase. Welcome to my not a podcast, but a ramble. Paprika Girl's Midnight Diner. I'm curled up in my kotatsu in my freshly spread winter corner of the zashiki of my home with a cup of atsukan. The sake is from Tokushima and it is called JOROU-GUMO. The reason is this. Tonight is the 29th of October, making it the season of Soko, the descent of the frost, and micro-season of Kosame Tokidoki Furu, or drizzle falls occasionally. It happens to be raining quite heavily outside tonight. I hope my spider friends are safe. Being the middle of autumn, you will find parks and gardens graced with the presence of the JOROU-GUMO. You heard me correctly. Spider. The JOROU-GUMO is a large black and yellow spider who spins spectacular webs to catch his prey, which is not us. In fact, the JOROU-GUMO is rather harmless and does not bite. But oh, the web she spins. You see, I have 2 gates to my garden, one near the car park, currently in waiting for my eventual purchase of a new Jimny car, and one near the postbox. The postbox path goes right between a number of healthy trees and gives a view of the garden, so I prefer it in the mornings when I sweep, so that I may check on my plants. And right in the middle of my path, there is a massive web by one of my resident JOROU spiders. She used to spin her web on the tree to the right, so I never bothered her. After all, it was also right above my medakabachi, where mosquitoes are eyeballing a place to lay their eggs. While the medaka have the eggs for breakfast, the mosquitoes themselves are very welcome to fly into the JOROU's web. It was a symbiotic relationship. But just 4 days ago, JOROU decided that the mosquitoes are not good enough and spends the night extending the dramatic weave all the way across the path. In the morning, I have fortunately spotted it every time. I swipe the left side of the web with the broom and let her go back to the trees on the right. But then every morning I wake up and there's the web again, and her bright black and yellow bottom is in the middle of it. This is a nuisance, and this is the 3rd day I have had to take her web down. Why not leave the web there? I am considering it, but then I will not be able to get my mail. Bills and advertisements are overrated anyway. Spider. When used as a kiggle, a seasonal word, they usually refer to late spring and early summer, but not always. The first famous haiku that pops into my head is the image of a still life. Kare hikuya, kago hana ike no kumo no ito. Spider webs on an arrangement of dried chrysanthemums. That one by Mori Ogai, one of my favorite Meiji authors. Such a powerful and dynamic character in academia and literature. But that's about webs, and not spiders, come to think of it. How about a modern one? I recently read one by Takada Akihito, which went, Aki urara no kiwami ni kumo asobi ito. The overwhelming autumn beauty of a spider's playing thread. That's a hard one to translate, come to think of it. Kiwami? Overwhelming? Extreme? Translators are poets. I wonder how others would translate that one. Anyway, spiders it is. I meant not to make this about spiders, but it's on my mind because that garden JOROU is. Speaking of creepy things, I am aware that this will be my last recording before Halloween, likely. Halloween is an increasingly popular festival here in Japan, too. Yes, Japan has Obon, which is a creepy Week of the Dead during summer. But Halloween is yet another reason to celebrate, dress up in funny costumes, and express a Western spooky aesthetic of black, purple, and orange silhouettes. Unfortunately, for all the sweets and bizarre purple smoothies it has inspired, there are two downsides to the arrival of this celebration. For one, in Kichijoji, we have a beautiful shopping street which, aside from buses, is meant for a pedestrian crowd to meander and dawdle and window shop their weekends away. Music is always playing, usually some kind of Ghibli or old jazz, welcome to all ages and inoffensive to the ear. Not so on Halloween. Some genius wrote Halloween songs. These are horrific screeches of children's off-key orchestral arrangements that inspire nausea and stabby thoughts. And it is played on incessant repeat. The only way to go shopping this time of year is either to hayaashi very quickly through town or wear headphones. It is unbearable. Unbearable. I will leave a link to the horrific song below if you are in the mood. It is an interesting element of human nature when you find something repulsive. One is immediately inclined to share it. Ah, how awful this smells! Here, you smell it. Oh, this is so ugly. Take a look. Oh, this tastes terrible. Have a sip. The second item on the list is the fascinating tug-of-war that is going on about drinking parties in Shibuya on Halloween. When I first arrived in Tokyo, Shibuya Scramble was not a tourist attraction, but a crosswalk. Then about 10 years in, I was transferring trains between the Inokashira line and the Ginza line and saw a mob of foreigners oogling out the window on the pedestrian bridge. I peeked out too, thinking there might be a festival or an accident of some grandiose nature, only to be disappointed at the usual people doing their usual thing and crossing the street. At some point in time, some travel guide had listed Shibuya Scramble as a tourist attraction, and suddenly mobs of travelers had started congregating on the bridge, snapping photos from above and staring. On the bridge they are no trouble and do not get in the way, but in the crosswalk they do. Many a time have I been inconvenienced by random people lying down in the street suddenly in front of me, filming something in the 10 seconds we have to cross, or being general nuisances. Unfortunately, no, there is no way to just go around the crosswalk. It was around that time when Halloween began to pick up in Japan too. It had always been a minor foreign thing, but as I mentioned before, Japan loves excuses to decorate, so Halloween grew in popularity. Unfortunately, in with the tourists came not only decorations, but these cosplay groups of full-grown adults. No longer young enough to trick-or-treat, they planted their cheap bums on the dirty streets of Shibuya Center-gai and began to cause havoc while drinking bad liquor. Imagine the perspective of the locals. You must remember, Shibuya was not always a congregation hub. 50 years ago, well within living memory, it was a quiet, conservative, and artistic suburb, rather like Kichijoji. Elegant chaya and geisha roamed the streets. It was only within the last 30 years that it began to grow. Pachinko parlors and nightclubs started popping up, and the noise began. So, from the perspective of the locals, a sudden, aggressive, and very non-grassroots movement to turn the streets into a crowded, impassable wall of drunk revelers was too much. It was further exacerbated by a certain ad campaign by a certain group of development companies that shall go unnamed. They began taking photographs of bizarrely dressed counterculture models and putting them on billboards with captions like, "This is Shibuya." Well, it was most definitely not Shibuya, since none of the photographs were of locals, but of tourists and travelers and that sort who dressed up outlandishly to visit downtown from other places and tag the town with all things undesirable. The locals in Shibuya were furious. On the weekends around Halloween, it was impossible to get through the station to their own homes. The once quiet streets were full of rowdy, rude, drunk people. The trains were being commandeered by awkward costumed partygoers, making simply going to work a miserable and smelly ordeal. And the mess was horrendous. Occasionally on the news there would be clips showing the locals going out and cleaning the mess that the drunks had made in an attempt to remind the revelers what they had done last night and discourage them from doing it again. But they kept coming, and it got worse every year. This was a huge boot in the bum of the mayor. Locals, the long-standing shops, and of course the patrons of the town inundated him with their concerns. Finally, after a particularly terrible Halloween in which a group of revelers flipped over a car in addition to their usual mess, the town had had enough, and they banned street drinking in the area. You can imagine the rather fascinating schism this caused in the expat community. One half sided with the Shibuya locals, citing their own discomfort and disapproval of the recent years. The other half was against the ban, insisting that culture was changing and the locals needed to change with it, and that they would bring their beer cans and regurgitation there anyway, and no one could stop them. In conclusion, it's still a bit of a debate. During coronavirus, the parties, if any, were much quieter. I think that the whirlwind of controversy is now riding on the back of recent meiwakuke YouTubers and TikTokers who have been dancing their way into Johnny Somali territory and riling up disdain for all tourists, partiers or not. I am watching here from a distance. If you have an opinion on it, please feel free to comment about that. I won't put this topic in any X posts, because it is the middle of a prickly season and all the trolls will come out along with the goblins from beneath the pedestrian bridges. I haven't gone to a Halloween party in decades, so it is all a big popcorn show for me. And of course what I hear from locals when I do go drinking at my usual, very local haunts in Shibuya. Haunts. I meant to do that. Not really. On to another topic. Tracy of the Weekly Fascination podcast dropped in the other day, and we had a very casual chat in the kotatsu. You can hear that on his channel. But he also proposed a question, asking, have you ever been mistaken for a celebrity? Well, back in my early to mid-20s, I was often mistaken for Julia Roberts. I don't think I look like her, but I often wore a big floppy hat and still retain a large Scorpio grin. So when I smiled, I seemed to have her sheepish aura, and I can recall some 5 or 6 times when people in Tokyo would run after me, asking if I was her. But never have I veered into photograph or autograph territory. When I was in high school, I had a Japanese friend at the international school I attended in Budapest. She often told me I looked like Fukada Kyoko, who I did not know, of course. The thing is, being in Japan, where Caucasians are in the minority, you end up being compared to any name hot on the press. I've been told I look like Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, Christina Hendricks, and Lena Headey. In reality, though, I look like none of them. I can't even think of a famous person anywhere that looks like me. If you think I look like anyone, well, mention it. Perhaps if I show you a picture of what I looked like when I was younger. Here's another topic. It's the election season. Since the moment the United States was founded, politics has been the national sport. It is very tribal, very heated, and goes through cycles of extreme upheaval and vigor, through lulls of yawns and boring speeches, back to excitement again, every 15 to 20 years or so. It is happening right now in the US and is really rather exciting. I am so glad I am far, far away across the pond. That said, Japan has just had its own elections. It's a backlash to the terrible appointment of Ishiba, who no one likes, as well as the current scandal du jour about money again. It's fascinating to visit the National Library and research what was happening 50, even 100 years ago or more in old newspapers, as my job often requires me to do. The headlines are exactly the same. Just change a few proper nouns and it's almost a facsimile of current events. Meet the new boss, same as the old boss. Indeed. And every few decades, a group of upstarts comes by and thinks they will change the world by wearing funny shirts and breaking things. And they get old, and the cycle of boring speeches and regurgitated philosophy gets recycled into the media, and the wheel is reinvented once more as time flows on. This brings me to my final point, which is directed at the ever-philosophical Kurt Bell et Softly Papa. I had meant to respond to one of his Firelight podcasts a bit ago, but time drained away, and so here it is, a bit late. He always seems to have me thinking about philosophy and history, which is a good thing, as it is a happy university major for me and a core tenet of our household. But I have one memo here for him. It is Ecclesiastes. Now, if you are not a religious man, you will probably not have ever read this book of the Bible. But if you read any book, especially if you are a Stoic and a philosopher, you will enjoy this one. It is somewhat of a lament. Written by an anonymous author we call Coelet or the teacher, it is about the passage of time and the insignificance of it all. In fact, many other philosophers have quoted its key phrase, Hevel Hevel, or all is vanity. I would like to encourage you, if you have a free evening, find a nice audiobook of Ecclesiastes read by James Earl Jones or someone with a good voice like that, and sit down and listen. I warn you, it is heavy, but it is also freeing. I'm not sure why I have it written here, but it must be something you said. Today's recording feels so much more like a diary entry than, well, I'm not sure what I'm really going for with this. It's not a podcast, of course. But if there is any thread to these recordings, it is a bit of Japanese life knowledge. Today on my X account, I posted a quick memo about chomeidyo. In Japan, there are about 10 staples of flavoring on which all culinary mariage is based. I learned this from my mother-in-law. First, it is sachi suseso. Sa for sato, which is sugar. Shi for shio, is salt. Su, meaning vinegar. Se for shoyu, since soy sauce was called soyu at one point in recent history. And so for miso. In addition, you have the trinity of sake, shoyu, and mirin. Oh, that's 8, right? It's 9, come to think of it, because one must add dashi to this list. The thing is, the choice of all these staples are what makes the flavor in your home. While grocery store cheapest ones might be fine the first few times, I recommend switching them to another type, one at a time, when you run out. For example, we always get our miso from Akita and our shoyu from Kagoshima. This comes from years of experimenting with taste. The pride of the Japanese kitchen is not how you can flavor something, how well you can advance the natural, original flavor of the ingredient with the addition of chomiryo. This is why knowing that the carrots came from Gunma and the daikon from Nerima makes such a difference. I must post more recipes, but will anyone try them? You should all follow Japanese Mom's Cooking. It's an adorable English language account of a real Japanese mom posting her food of the day. It's wonderful. She might be a better follow for that, I'm sure of it. Okay, that's that. I will end this. Perhaps this recording is a temporary link, like a spider's web, from one podcast to the next, in which I will have more pithy content. Good night, and happy Halloween to all you ghouls out there. Oyasumi.